yours.
Okay, so I have this list of advocacy tips.
All right.
11 advocacy tips, okay? First, use your voice. You are the expert. You are the expert. You know a lot about this work, how to do the early learning work, how to work effectively with our parents as partners. This is pretty important, especially because a big focus of my conversation has been get outside your comfort zone about who you're building relationships with. Yes, you are raised to believe that your U.S. senator, your governor knows more about everything than you do. It happens not to be the case in this area. You actually do know more than they do. They may have fancier rhetoric, but have some confidence around your expertise. Second, make sure as you're doing your advocacy work and you're thinking about your public policy and programming that you are working to protect your infrastructure. This is a controversial statement, but from my own perspective, having worked in state government on the side where you're part of the decisional process, how do we craft budgets, negotiate them with the legislature and all of that, you gotta think long term here. If you are in that awful place of having to give things up, be careful about how you do that in terms of how you get them back. It's harder to get your infrastructure back. I know this can be very unpopular to say. It is harder to get your infrastructure back. So to me, you got to keep that in mind if we're about long-term systemic impact for the children and families we serve. Third, partnerships, create them. It is all about relationships. I think we've talked about who I at least think those partnerships and who's in the circle. Elected officials, your families, your civic leaders and corporate leaders, your leaders in public ed and higher ed, your leaders in healthcare, human services, and law enforcement, press. We haven't talked so much about that, which is too bad with Susan here. The press and the media, you need them, okay? These people are stakeholders. One way or another, they're beneficiaries of our work. They may not know that. It's your job to help them understand that and to figure out the messengers. Sometimes you're not the messenger. Often with these people, you are not going to be the messenger. So you got to get comfortable with that too. Fourth, use data and evidence to show that our programs improve outcomes, contribute to economic development. Okay? We have a lot of data, and I've already said this, but be judicious with your use of the data. Just enough to make your point, do not overdo it. And yes, Susan will talk about this from a media standpoint, infographics, all of that, like visualization, it matters. Fifth, I've said this already, you got to use your heart. People are persuaded by a combination of data and stories, okay? So that is really important. I was just reading the New York Times yesterday, the piece around the behavioral economists and the social psychologists who helped with the Obama campaign. I don't know if people saw that, about the piece about competence and confidence in leaders, okay? Something to think about. That, you know, and they were mega looking at the voting public. They were saying it's dual, confidence and competence, all right? So these things are important. Emotional connectivity, confidence, important. Executive function, we spend all this time, right, saying we're all about and grounding our children's success, then you got to use that in your persuasion too. 6, I've said this already, act in the present. You've got to do your work day to day, be thinking about the future. Is what I'm advocating for today and the things I'm doing now, how are they going to play out? Do not get so caught into the moment. You have to be in the moment, but you have got to locate your policy and advocacy thinking into the future you're trying to get to. So I think that's just critical, basically. It also helps you get out of those ugly war zone moments about fighting with each other. 7th, persist, do not give up, okay? Now, I used to say all the time in Pennsylvania, people would be like, gosh, you guys got a lot done really quickly. And I said, you know what? You can't get things you forget to ask for. People can't read your mind. They don't know what we're talking about for the most part. So if you don't put it out there, people can't respond to the things you forgot to give them about, okay? And you have to be very persistent, basically. A lot of players keep looking for the things, you know, that allow that. Eighth, leadership. Everyone has a leadership role. I personally think this is a matter of professional responsibility, okay? I feel very strongly about that. It's a professional responsibility, whatever your leadership role. And in fact, you know, when I have people say this whole thing is I can't be an advocate because that's out of my job spec, or that sounds like something that's illegal, we're not allowed to do that, I have another way to help you think about that, and it's accountability. Most of you are doing work that is financed with taxpayer dollars. Am I right? Does anyone in this room work for an organization that does not have public sector financing? 100% of you work in organizations with public sector financing. You have a responsibility. You are using money that people don't want to give you because people hate paying their taxes. Okay? So if you have trouble with this leadership thing for advocacy, as an advocacy question, just think about it as an accountability matter. I think it, like, you know, can help you go and swim in a different direction. Okay? Ninth, play, celebrate, okay? I look for, like, if you're at the beginning stages of some of your work, it doesn't matter how small it is, celebrate, play, okay? Really critical here. You had a small gain, celebrate it. Maybe you didn't get the big gain. I mean, you can't give up on the big gain. I'm saying that. You got to have that vision, but celebrate in the moment. 10th, show and tell. This is a persuasion thing. You know, I talked about this a little bit. We have to help influential leaders understand the work by showing it to them, okay, and be creative about that. So our tours and our interactions help people see the value of our work in early learning. They actually help people see what children are learning and how they are doing it, and how, importantly, the public funds are used in your programs. So do not take them and say, our private fundraising furnished this great playground. That's the wrong message, okay? That is the wrong message. Oh, the private sector can take care of that. That's not what you're all about. The right message there is, here is the resources we got from whatever it is you call the program here in New York State, and here's what they let us do. And yes, show them the things that, make no mistake about it, that it's these well-qualified, experienced staff who are doing things with the children that are improving their learning. You have to show this to people. They don't intuitively see this, and especially with the infants. And the last thing I want to say is stay on message and stay unified. From a public policy perspective, you've got to get clear about what your ask is and put that ask out there. And you have to have a mechanism in the state to get people on the same page around your positions. What you can't have is every group with a different ask, okay? So this issue of unified on the messaging is really important. Now, you've already heard me say enough, big enough tent. It would be weird to me if people were only fighting for one thing. And you probably can't get enough unity if you're only fighting for one thing. So it's more than one thing, but it's not a list of 20 because you're not going to get politically anything done with a list of 20. So whatever that is, though, people have to be unified and have to understand whatever their private concern is, basically they got to put it away. So that's my list of advocacy tips. Thank you.